Minister Ong Ye Kung, Minister of State, Associate Professor Faisal Ibrahim, Senior Parliamentary Secretary Eric Chua, Mr. Neil Parekh, and your fellow board directors, past advisors and emeritus chairpersons of SICCI, members of the diplomatic corps, business leaders, including the leaders of the other business chambers in Singapore, and distinguished guests, and most important, the long-standing members of SICCI who are here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here together with my wife to celebrate SICCI's 100 years. And it's particularly gratifying to see several of the past leaders of SICCI with us here tonight. And as I mentioned, members who've been with you for decades in several instances. And the fact that you're here together with the leaders of our other local business chambers is also significant because that is part of the way forward. SICCI's roles have evolved quite dramatically over the years. Its beginnings were in a completely different era. It was a time when Singapore was a colonial trading post, and it was defined in large part by the flows of produce, all sorts of produce, people, and flows of culture around Asia, back and forth in Asia. And that defined much of what Singapore was. And flows back and forth between India and the rest of Asia passing through Singapore were a very significant part of that picture. In fact, going back much earlier than the 100 years, because those flows between India and the rest of Asia are much older than 100 years. But your roles changed dramatically, particularly after independence. With independence came in a national identity, a multiracial national identity. And it also brought an increasingly modern economy, a more diverse economy, and one which has had to keep adapting to a changing world. And so too SICCI. SICCI has had to adapt in major ways. If you look at the range of companies we just saw on the video, the winners of your Centennial Business Awards, some are in traditional areas, some are in new areas, some are in old areas, but with new technologies applied. They're a very diverse range of companies. And that's instructive because your membership now and your mission is to serve businesses across diverse sectors, but they're businesses that are increasingly having to contend with and take advantage of technology, respond to the challenges of sustainability, and increasingly see their future growth coming not just out of operations in Singapore, but investments in operations around the world, particularly in Asia. And that's the new role that SICCI is playing. And together with our other local chambers, SICCI also thinks nationally. You represent the interests of the wider business community. And equally, I would say, as key representatives of the business sector, our business chambers are responsible for the collective good of Singaporeans, collective good of all our citizens. But I should highlight too another important role of SICCI that has always been relevant, and that is bringing together the different segments of the Indian business community in Singapore. Those with roots and networks in different parts of India, those that are long established in Singapore, as well as the newer enterprises, including the newer enterprises that have arrived in Singapore in recent years. That role as an integrator between old and new, between businesses from different Indian ethnicities, must always be on your mind and always on your agenda. And I was happy to see from your list of award winners as well that you have that diversity, and it indicates a certain orientation of bringing together traditional and new enterprises and owners of enterprises who come from different backgrounds. That too is part of your mission. And it's worth recalling that it wasn't always that way. In fact, it didn't start that way. Because when the Indian Merchants Association was formed in 1924, almost all of its 35 members were Bombay traders. And merchants from other parts of India, in fact, were reluctant to join. They were reluctant to join. It was a Bombay trading club. But Mr. R. Jumaboy, one of the founding leaders, was determined to expand the membership and to make sure that it represented a cross-section of the Indian business community. And he succeeded. And after him, we had, of course, the other giant amongst our pioneer business leaders, Mr. P. Govindasamy Pillai, who had the same orientation. His own business was centered in the Strangun Road area, but he grew, and importantly, he wanted to represent the interests of the wider community and to serve those interests. You must also continue to promote opportunities for collaboration with non-Indian businesses in Singapore, including in venturing into India and elsewhere in the region. And that must be the case not just for SICCI, but for all our local business chambers and trade associations, seeking common cause with each other and helping businesses from different traditional backgrounds to collaborate fruitfully as we expand Singapore's presence abroad. Singapore's relations with India are growing. They're growing in both depth and breadth. I need not talk at length about the opportunities which India presents. Suffice to say that it is one of the fastest growing economies in the world and widely expected to remain that way for several years to come. Increased economic and business linkages between Singapore and India are in both countries' interests. And there are many examples of where this is now getting a new growth spurt. The digital space is a good example. Singapore was was the first to tie up with India in fast retail payments through the linkage between PayNow and UPI. But we must go further. We must go further and deeper in connecting our digital economies. In sustainability, where India has immense potential as a renewable energy player, and in India's emerging semiconductor sector, where Singapore's ecosystem, from chip fabrication to capability development and financing of smart manufacturing, can add value. So I encourage more Singapore companies to visit India, get to know it well, and in particular, to explore the different Indian states to some depth. SICCI has been very active in promoting this, state by state. And I know that you've been active in very recent times, last year and this year, with Tamil Nadu and Gujarat. You had their business delegations come, but you also sent business delegations to their business summits, which turned out to be very fruitful. In fact, the Singapore businesses who attended those two summits in Gujarat and Tamil Nadu committed a total of nearly $10 billion. Those are committed investments across sectors like sustainability, infrastructure, and technology. And importantly, it's not just the large businesses that are making the most of these opportunities. There are many growth enterprises doing so as well, some of which we just saw. I've got another example that I found quite interesting. Lions Bot. Now, Lions Bot was in the traditional cleaning supplies business, but they've now moved into cleaning robots, which are actually a growth area. They were started by a couple of co-founders Dylan Ng and Michelle Xiao, and they teamed up with Dr. Mohan Rajesh Elora, who is a robotics professor, to develop the technologies that are affordable and hopefully are going to be able to make an impact on the market. They're now in India. They are planning to partner now with top universities in Tamil Nadu to set up training laboratories as well as to design hardware and software courses. Just an example, growth enterprises, old industry using new technology and exploring the world. We have to promote greater awareness of opportunities in India among more Singaporeans. The awareness is not widespread. We must build it up. We must build up the spirit of adventure, not only among Indian Singaporeans when it comes to India, but Singaporeans of all ethnicities. We have to build up that awareness and that spirit of adventure. I'll give you a very good example. A young man, well, maybe he's not so young now, but he's someone called Andy Lim. He spent 17 years in Chennai. In fact, not in the heart of Chennai, but he spent most of his time, in fact, in a place that's an hour's drive out of Chennai. Some of you may know it, those who are familiar with Tamil Nadu, Anbattur, which is an hour's drive from Chennai, very far from the creature comforts. But Andy Lim was a fresh Polytechnic graduate. He had an engineering diploma from Singapore Polytechnic, decided to start his career in India, took up an opportunity with a local firm, Propack Materials, which manufactures clean rooms and electrostatic products. Dived into it. He was put in charge of sales in India. Initially, they had just a few clients, and he grew the base. Based out of Anbattur, traveling great distances by traditional modes of transport, including rickshaw, by the way, pumping water through hand pumps, learning the ropes, learning quickly, and growing. And now he set up his own firm. He has several offices around India. He has his own workforce, and for good measure speaks rather good conversational Tamil. His workers rate him as 8 upon 10. And at least a sprinkling of Hindi. So that's what it takes, spirit of adventure. Willing to try, willing to learn, and willing to seek out opportunity. All Singaporeans can do that. Not just in India, but Southeast Asia, in China, in the world that is growing. I commend the leaders of SICCI, past and present, for your contributions to Singapore's development. And I'm particularly encouraged by SICCI's efforts now to work with companies to groom a new generation of business leaders. But never forget, though, that your ultimate responsibility is to the Singapore community. I'm glad you're working with SINDA, with the Singapore Indian Educational Trust, with Sri Narayana Mission, as well as many other bodies, to develop social cohesion, as Neil said, emphasized in his speech, to develop social cohesion and spread opportunities for all. That was the instinct amongst our pioneer business leaders. They saw themselves as serving the wider community, and they wanted the benefits of growth to flow not just to businesses and their owners, but to the wider community. I'm reminded of something that Rabindranath Tagore said many years ago. In fact, it's one of my favorite sayings from one of my favorite people. I quote, "I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy." Unquote. So, congratulations once again on your centenary. Wishing you many more years of growth and collaboration for the greater good. Thank you very much.